Greetings, I am the wrestling fan. I may not be the best wrestling fan, but I am the finest. And welcome to another rendition of The Wrestling Fan's Wrestling DVD / Blu-Ray Reviews, where on this episode, I look at the newly released Scott Hall Blu-ray, which is entitled Living on the Razor's Edge, the Scott Hall story. Let's get to it. Now, I know a lot of people are probably souring a little bit because it's been so much about the Clique over the last few years. You know, once Triple H kind of got in charge of the company, there's been a lot more Kevin Nash, and now that Scott Hall is clean, a little bit more Scott Hall, some more X-Pac, you know, and of course Shawn Michaels is always going to be there. And even, like, I got a little tired of the Hall of Fame. I'm like, oh, Jesus, it's like every year a new Clique member gets in. But they deserve it. They were talented. And when I heard about this, I was kind of like, I usually get all the new releases unless it's just something in terms of these, like the compilations, like this year the NXT compilation, the Dudley Boyz, the US Championship Blu-ray, and this one. And this is the newest one that has come out. You can also get it on DVD, but I got the Blu-ray because it's not that much more money, and you get some good extras with it, some extra matches, which is always nice. But this is a fantastic retrospective of Scott Hall, and it made me appreciate him a lot more as a talent. Because I always loved the Razor Ramon character, and I also loved Scott Hall in WCW with the NWO. I was not a huge WCW fan back in the heyday when it was huge. I was more a WWF guy, but I always thought he was the coolest out of the original three, just his attitude and the, hey yo, you know, I liked him, and I was like, oh, it's Razor. But it's not Razor, you know, it's Scott Hall now. But I remember Razor Ramon as a kid in the early 90s, and I loved to boo him on the TV, just boo, and it bothered me, that little strand of hair in front of his face. I was just like, oh my god, just go like this, you stupid man. And I hadn't seen Scarface yet, so I didn't know that he was doing a Tony Montana impression. So once I found that out, I loved it even more. I was like, that is Scarface, that's Tony Montana, that's Al Pacino as Scarface, that's awesome. And it worked, and he made the character work. And he was so good as a bad guy that he became a good guy. I didn't realize in WWE he had a longer run as a good guy than he did a bad guy. You know, he was only a bad guy for barely a year. I didn't realize that. But mainly what I'll talk about is the documentary, and I'll go over, you know, the extras, the matches and stuff, because it's good stuff too. The documentary is great. It clocks in about an hour and 20 minutes, which is fair, I suppose. And they go over his early life. They go over something that I'm not going to talk about here because I don't want to ruin any part of the documentary for you. But Scott went through a very tragic moment early in his life, like when he was still like barely out of high school or early 20s, and it changed him, you know, forever. He doesn't blame the incident for how he became, but it definitely played a part, and it's very dark. It's almost like a Jake the Snake Roberts story. It's very dark, but it's not Scott Hall's fault. Well, I guess what am I doing? This isn't a movie. You know, this is a real person in real life. You know, it's probably on his Wikipedia page. Basically what happened, he was a bouncer at a bar. A guy in the parking lot pulled a gun on him to rob him or something. Scott Hall tried to fight him away, and he ended up shooting the guy who was trying to possibly kill him. And Scott Hall killed the guy. He didn't murder him. It was self-defense, and it was seen that way in the eyes of the court. Rightfully so. It was justified. But it was very dark, and it changed him. I mean, he killed a man, and no one should ever have to kill anybody. And you know, it was the guy's fault who tried to rob him or who tried to kill him. You know, Scott just, thank God he defended himself. He probably wouldn't be here if he hadn't. But I had no idea. I did not know that was a part of Scott's past. I had never heard that. So it was interesting, and they go into a good amount of detail. And you know, Scott, it's hard for him to talk about still. He's still dealing with it, which I can understand. He'll probably never come to peace with it for the rest of his life. I can't imagine that. I hope I never can imagine it. But then it moves on to, you know, when he got started in wrestling, he started bodybuilding, got really big, and he almost kind of got lucky how he got into wrestling. He loved wrestling since he was a kid, but how do you get into it? But because of his look, he looked like Tom Selleck, or like even Magnum TA back in the old NWA days. You know, because during that time period, Tom Selleck was huge with the mustache, and not huge, but Magnum PI, and Scott Hall did look a lot like that in his early career. And he had even the same hair, type of thing. And it talked about him going to like the AWA and, kind of bouncing around, even in like WCW, where he first met Kevin Nash. He met Shawn Michaels in AWA. It's an interesting journey, and he really worked hard at wrestling and got better and got better and got better. And he finally made it to WWE, and basically I was trying to think, I think he made it there once and then was fired or let go, and then eventually made it back. Or no, what was I remember what it was. He was in WCW and he called WWF for a year straight trying to get a hold of Pat Patterson. But he knew Kurt Hennig, they were former AWA tag team champions, and he knew Kurt Hennig, and he was bothering Kurt Hennig, trying to say, like, can you just get me an interview? Like, I want a job in WWF. I really want to work there. And finally, he got through to Pat Patterson. They hired him, and he mentioned the whole Razor Ramon gimmick, and Vince loved it. And thank God he did, because it was one of the best gimmicks I can remember in WWF or WWE. It's great. And what's cool is, not extras, it's on the DVD too, they have all the Razor Ramon vignettes that played before he debuted. And also a short outtakes. And it's really funny to watch. Scott's a pretty funny guy. But, it shows how when he debuted and, he was a big bad guy, and he got a shot at Bret Hart in the WWF title at the Royal Rumble in 93, and that's a fun match. That's on the set as well. That's a really underrated match in my opinion. Very, very good match. And how he kind of just became a good guy because he was so good at being a bad guy. And then of course they talk about him and Shawn, WrestleMania 10, the ladder match, all that stuff. That's on this as well, as it should be. It's been released a million times, but it's that good. And eventually talks about the Click, of course, which it's great. I mean, they've gone over it like the NWO a million times, but it's still fun to hear about, and his side of the story, why he went to WCW and his WCW tenure. Now I was a little confused because it wasn't even an hour in. It was like 55 minutes in, or 50 minutes in, and it was already done with his wrestling career. They talked about when the NWO came back after WCW ended in 2002 and how he didn't really make it because he wasn't in good shape. And it's a good half hour of them talking about his demons. And they don't try to hide anything. They go over a lot of his stuff. Very, very dark stuff. A lot of stuff I didn't know. And really, Scott shouldn't be here. And I'm glad they put that in there. And I think Scott wanted to, because kids are going to watch this. And I would hope kids would watch this, because it'll show you, don't turn to drugs and pills and alcohol. It's not going to help your life. It's going to make it worse. And because of, Scott says, a big part of it was because he could never get over how he killed that guy, but also because his wrestling life wasn't fulfilling, his marriage fell apart. It doesn't seem like he was, he was a good father, but I don't think he was like the best father, and it's hard to when you're on the road so much. But, he just had his issues. And I don't think Scott ever really liked Scott as much as he should have. So for the last half hour, that's mainly what it's about, and it really turns into a story of redemption. And if you haven't seen the documentary, The Resurrection of Jake the Snake, do watch it. It's on iTunes. It's incredible, phenomenal. There may be other ways to purchase it, I'm not sure, but I got it on iTunes for like $10. And Scott Hall's in it as well, because it also turns into kind of his redemption story as well. And they show the DDP stuff on here, and eventually Scott going into the Hall of Fame, which was great. And he's still he's in great shape, because when you see him right when he gets to DDP's house, he's like 300 pounds, he's in a wheelchair, he's in horrible shape, just like Jake was. And to see Scott now, he looks great. He looks his age, but he's like almost 60 years old. Because I'm only saying that because fans will do that. Like, oh, God, he looks old. It's like, well, he's almost 60 years old. Like, what the hell do you expect? You're not going to look 20 when you're 60, even if you have those surgeries. It's like, but he looks great, and I'm proud of him. Like, he deserves to have a happy life, and he seems very happy. And he's been let back into the WWE family. He's slipped a few times, but he's still clean and sober, and he's doing a great job. And I think this was very therapeutic for him. And I'm glad, WWE documentaries are always so great. Even if they're too short, they're just so well done and entertaining. And this one was very entertaining and dark, but informative. and I'm glad that I bought it, because it made me respect the man Scott Hall even more, and made me love the character of Razor Ramon even more. Because when he went in the Hall of Fame, he didn't go as Scott Hall. He went in as Razor Ramon, because that's how beloved that character is. We love what he did in WCW, but he loves the stuff he did in WWE even more, or WWF. He loves Razor. That's who he is. And that's pretty cool. And so the documentary is fantastic. It really is kind of, even though it's only an hour and 20 minutes, it's enough time. It covers everything. And at the end of it, I felt, yeah, that was a full story. I'm glad, him in the Hall of Fame, it completed the whole story. It was a tale of redemption, and also celebration of a good or great career, a Hall of Fame career. And the extras, just so many really just great matches. His debut in WWE, some good matches from AWA, him and Kurt Hennig as tag champions, some early, I don't remember a lot of this stuff. I haven't watched all of the earlier stuff. I've been watching a lot of the WWF stuff. But him in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, like I said, him and AWA, a lot of stuff from there. Some stuff from WCW when he was with Diamond Dallas, when he was the Diamond Stud and stuff like that. And then he came to WWE, his championship match with Razor Ramon, his match with the Kid on Raw, the very first one they had. And he loved that. Like, it showed, like, Scott Hall wasn't trying to bury anybody. I don't think the Clique was either. I mean, some guys they didn't like, and that wasn't right. But I think they tried to help get people over. A match that I don't think's ever been released, him and Shawn Michaels for the Intercontinental Championship, before they had that Intercontinental Championship match at WrestleMania 10, and I've never heard of this match, and it's a really good match. So it's great when they find those little gems that they can include, because a lot of this stuff has been released before, or you can see on the network. That match you can't. The first time he won the Intercontinental Championship, him and Shawn, they have I think 2 out of... He won the Intercontinental Championship 4 times. And the last 2 matches are matches that he didn't win it. And they're both at the Royal Rumble. Like, he had 2 Royal Rumble Intercontinental Championship matches that were just fantastic. The first one against Jeff Jarrett, and the second one against Goldust. And I need to get over the fact, like, ruin these matches. The matches are 20, 30 years old. So, whatever. It doesn't matter. If the match is good, you don't really care about the outcome, especially when it's 20, 30 years old. But he didn't win either one of those matches, but they're that good. So, it's good that they included those. I've actually never watched either one. I need to. But, yeah, 2 of the times he won the Intercontinental Championship out of the 4. And then, of course, it goes to WCW. The first time the Outsiders won the tag titles, that's a good match against Harlem Heat. Outsiders versus Sting and Lex Luger, the rematch from Bash at the Beach when the NWO was formed. Him and Sting in a WCW Championship match. Just some good stuff, and a couple matches from when he came back to WWE in 2002. And he even admits he was in horrible shape. He wasn't doing that well, and that's why he didn't want to be there anymore. And the Blu-ray exclusives I haven't watched yet, but it's 6 extra matches. So it's like, for an extra $5, yeah, why not? And some stuff that you may not be able to find on the network. So all in all, another very well put together Blu-ray from WWE, and it's a great celebration of Scott Hall's life and career. I hope it sells well. I think he deserves it. He deserves that respect, and I think this will. People love Razor Ramon and love Scott Hall. So my review of this, or I guess my rating, honestly, the thing is, I would have said a 4 out of 5, but I'm going to actually give it a 4.5 out of 5. For this reason. Usually I'll watch a documentary and I'll watch the matches maybe later, because a lot of the matches I've already seen. I started watching the matches on this and I couldn't stop. The documentary put me in such a Scott Hall, Razor Ramon mood, I had to watch his matches, and I ended up watching everything, or not everything, but most of what's on the first disc, and a lot of what's on the second disc, minus the Blu-ray exclusives. So the documentary did a damn good job then, because it made me want to watch his stuff, and watching his stuff made me appreciate his talents even more. So, Living on a Razor's Edge, the Scott Hall story, the Blu-ray, 4.5 out of 5, like I said. Very great, another great release by WWE, and, I'm very, very happy that I spent my hard-earned money on it. So maybe you will too. If not, fine. The documentary will be on the network eventually. But if you're a fan of Razor Ramon or Scott Hall, you will love this. So, that was another rendition of The Wrestling Fans Wrestling DVD/Blu-ray Reviews. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. If there are any older ones that you want me to review, I'm going to slide this in real quick. Let me know. I probably have them. If not, I'll try to do all the new ones that come out if I'm able to purchase them. So anyway, thank you very much, and I'll see you later, bitches.